Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Schrader. I'm Director of Project Management here in the Department of Energy's Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, or OCED. Thank you for joining us today to learn about our exciting projects in the Energy Improvements in Rural and Remote Areas program, commonly known as ERA, within the OCED portfolio. This program is ultimately about helping meet the climate goals of our nation and ensuring that every American, in particular today, rural and remote Americans, can unlock the benefits that come with the transition to a clean energy future. Next slide, please. So just a little about logistics today. You can turn on live captions by clicking on Show Captions in your control panel. You can also turn on Spanish and ASL interpretation by clicking the interpretation button in your control panel. And then finally, you will be able to find a recording of this webinar and a copy of the presentation slides on our website in the next few days. And I'll leave the slide there for a second for everyone to see it. So, as many of you know, rural and remote communities face very unique challenges when it comes to energy, particularly high energy cost, lower reliability. In fact, 84% of all households without reliable electricity in the United States live in rural areas. This program is designed to address the distinct challenges these communities face, and in particular was designed for communities with a population of 10,000 people or less. Today, the team's excited to be speaking to you about 19 recently selected projects that will accelerate the clean energy deployment in rural and remote communities across this nation. In this presentation, we're going to share a little bit more about the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, OCED, as I said, spend some time talking about each of the selected projects in this round of funding and some upcoming opportunities for engagement. While we're not taking live questions today, we do invite feedback through our email address, and we will provide at the end of this presentation. In addition, in the coming weeks, OCED will host 3 virtual regional briefings with the project teams themselves to hear directly from local communities, and that will include a Q&A session. Details on these briefings will be shared a little bit later in this presentation. Next slide, please. So a couple days ago, Tuesday, we announced $78 million for 19 community-driven projects in 12 states and 13 tribal nations. These projects will help cut energy costs, enhance resiliency, and support local economic development. The $78 million in grant funding, made possible by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, empowers communities to develop unique and tailored energy projects to meet their needs. These include removing barriers that prevent many communities from accessing federal funding. The program was designed to allow communities to access the federal funding. And most importantly, because these are small communities, we did not require a cost share associated with this. So it's a 100% cost share or government paid grant for these projects. They will be a number of diverse and innovative clean energy technologies, including solar, wind, heat pumps, microgrids, and electric thermal storage. The grid improvements, or they also include grid improvements, battery energy storage systems, and energy efficient upgrades. Just a couple examples. 5 of the projects use microgrids and associated solar or other energy sources to displace diesel fuel, reducing costs, greenhouse gas emissions, and other risks that come from the use of diesel fuels, such as fuel spills. 4 of the transmission and distribution projects help to improve energy reliability and increase the capacity for future use of renewable power and reduce environmental and health impacts for the communities. All of these projects will increase the reliability of the electricity in this area, and many of them will help to reduce overall costs of energy for the communities. In addition, part of our project is to demonstrate projects that are scalable and or replicable. And many of these, I think we will see, have the ability to be replicated in future applications. In addition, as part of this commitment for these projects, they were to support good paying jobs, advance environmental energy justice, and strengthen tribal energy sovereignty. Each of the applications included discussions about the community benefits associated with these projects. And we'll touch on each of these as we go through the projects going further. Furthermore, these 19 selected projects benefit surrounding communities. And many of them, if not all, are all considered disproportionately overburdened by pollution or historically underserved. The ERA program helps to ensure that this clean energy transition makes energy more accessible and affordable for all Americans. And these projects demonstrate this to rural America and in particularly rural and remote communities associated with, or the leadership in these communities. Next slide, please. So let's just take a very deep dive and quick dive into OCED and the energy improvement in rural and remote areas. So next slide, please. Just briefly, OCED itself, and then we'll go specifically into our program. We were established in December 2021 by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, but it's more commonly known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BILL. And its mission, you can see there by our mission statement, was to scale energy technologies to tackle the pressing needs of the country associated with climate change. Specifically, it's to demonstrate projects at scale, in this case, smaller scale, being rural and remote projects, in partnerships with the private sector where possible, but to incur market adoption and include an equitable transition. And hence my comment about many, if not all of these projects are in areas that have been underserved in the past. It's also a key part of the mission to ensure that this is an equitable transition. And key to that is investing in projects in the safest and most transparent way possible and getting community input into what the project looks like, how it shapes specific OCED funding, and how we approach to build out the clean energy industry. Next slide, please. So with that, let's get into the projects themselves. I'll pass it on to Regina Gaylor. She's our program manager for the ERA program, and she'll take a deeper dive into all of these projects. Regina.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you to the team for pulling this together. And especially thank you to all of us who have joined us here today. We're grateful for your time. So Todd referenced the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, commonly referred to as BILL. In December of 2021, the BILL authorized Department of Energy to invest $1 billion into this ERA program. So this program is within that Office of Clean Energy demonstrations that Todd just described. And then the next level is the Department of Energy. So you can see the organizational hierarchy. But the purpose of our ERA program is to provide financial assistance in rural or remote areas of the United States, those areas that have fewer than 10,000 people. And generally, we say that we want to improve resilience, safety, reliability, and even availability of energy. We also want to improve environmental protection from the adverse impacts of energy generation. So we say that we have 3 general goals for our program that you'll see on this slide on the right. Number 1, we aim to deliver measurable benefits to energy customers in those rural and remote areas by funding replicable energy projects. You'll hear us emphasize replicability and resiliency a lot, but we hope that these replicable projects could lower costs, improve access and resilience, and reduce environmental harm. The second grouping, or the second goal that we emphasize, is that we will support new rural or remote system models that use climate resilient technologies, that use business structures promoting resiliency, new financing mechanisms for clean energy generation, or new community engagement practices, all important emphases of the program and of the bill. And the third major goal that we emphasize is that we aim to build clean energy knowledge, capacity, and self-reliance in rural and remote America. Next slide, please. So a little bit about this specific funding opportunity. it was a year ago, in May of 2023, that we announced this $50 million grant funding opportunity within the ERA program. So we will say, and based on a lot of groundwork, communications, engagements, webinars, we built this funding opportunity based on what we heard, rural communities' feedbacks throughout the US. So we aimed through this opportunity to simplify the application process based on much demand, a lot of information about that. Remove the cost share requirement. A lot of people noted that how much that would simplify and enable them to access and apply for the funding. We're offering technical assistance, and we aim to reduce the financial reporting requirements. So after we launched that funding opportunity in May of last year, we put out the initial application phase as a pre-application form. And we received 659 eligible pre-applications. In those applications, the applicants proposed a real diverse array of technologies, and they applied from every region of the country. So out of those 659, we invited 59 pre-applications, and those pre-applications were invited to submit full applications. That was the second part of our application process. And as Todd referenced, on Tuesday, we announced 19 project selectees. They were selected projects for award negotiations. And we would say these 19 as well, this subset, show the breadth and diversity of clean energy technologies. So we're happy to share that because of the competitiveness and the high quality of the applications that we received, we increased the funding amount on this estimated $50 million FOA to $78 million. $78 million worth of project selections, and that we hope we would move into award. Next slide, please. So the goal of the 19 projects is to address the unique challenges in rural or remote communities by deploying this range of clean energy technologies. And you will see among the technologies here, solar photovoltaic technology. It's one of the fastest growing and the most affordable sources of new electricity across the country. Grid improvements through upgraded high capacity transmission lines that would help modernize the resilience of the grid. Microgrids, they're localized electric grids that can disconnect from the main grid and offer autonomously to operate, and they strengthen resilience. They help mitigate grid disturbances. And lastly, energy efficiency upgrades, which would promote the comfort for homeowners and ultimately, we hope, lower operating costs for businesses. In summary, the selected projects will support diverse and replicable clean energy technologies, improve access and resilience, lower burden and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, develop the rural remote workforce, and empower ultimately the communities that benefit from the projects. Next slide, please. So looking at this map of the lower 48, we have mentioned that OCED selected the 19 ERA projects for award negotiations. The projects are geographically diverse, as you can see. So I want to start by sharing where the projects are proposed to be located here in this map. Across the continental United States. And please note that the star icon, and so maybe this will be in a separate map. I will keep going. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here's the Alaska map. It's a deeper look at the projects that were selected out of this FOA across Alaska. And again, we would say that this map helps exemplify how we hope to support some of our country's most remote communities. We will get into and describe all the projects. Next slide, please. So on community benefits plans, each project was required to develop a community benefits plan intended to ensure that the local communities and workers who are engaged in the project from the outset and helping ensure that concrete benefits are identified. So we'll provide robust project management oversight of the community benefits implementation throughout the project lifecycle, working closely with the selectees and ultimately, we hope, awardees. Next slide. So a little more on community benefits. The 4 pillars of community benefits include community and labor engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, investing in the American workforce, and the Justice 40 initiative. So our engagement, the OSID program's engagement with communities, will kick off during negotiations, during which time we'll work with the selectees to strengthen community benefits and incorporate input. And more importantly, community benefits are meant to be adaptable. As a project progresses, we know lessons will be learned, and as community input is received, we will work with selectees to try to ensure continuous evaluation and potential updates. Next slide, please. So with that, I will transition to what you're all here for, and that is to talk about the actual proposed projects. So while we'll only provide a brief overview of the projects, you can find more information by visiting our ERA program website. And my colleague has just dropped the website link in the chat. Next slide, please. Okay, so starting on the Adams Electric Cooperative, and I'm just going to ask, thank you in advance for your patience with me, and sorry in advance if I mispronounce any names. The Adams Electric Co-op proposes to install a megawatt wind turbine along with 1 megawatt of solar to eliminate potentially 40,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. Project is expected to reduce energy costs by more than $200,000 annually for the 7,500 rural families who are members of the cooperative, and that's across 7 remote Illinois counties. With the grant, the project would reinvigorate disadvantaged communities. They hope those are affected by coal mine disclosures, and they also hope to enhance renewable energy production. Next slide, please. Clean energy and efficiency for Dallas County, Alabama schools. The Dallas County, Alabama Board of Education seeks to retrofit about 9 schools across their district, and many of which were constructed in the 1950s. They would upgrade HVAC units, lighting systems, and building controls using smart technologies. 3 of their schools also could receive approximately 353 kilowatt rooftop solar PV systems. So those systems would directly power their facilities. And these upgrades would help remedy air quality issues. They hope improve comfort and health conditions in the schools and support better learning environments ultimately for thousands of K-12 students in historic Selma and around Alabama's surrounding rural communities. Next slide, please. The cost-effective and equitable cooperative community solar in Western Maine. This project proposes to install 150 kilowatts of solar arrays at 6 sites across Western Maine. They hope to reduce energy costs for consumer and worker-owned cooperative members. At least 50% of the project beneficiaries are in low-income households, and the project expects to reduce electricity costs between 20 to 40%. Next slide, please. Decarbonizing the Tongass with tribally owned heat pumps. Situated in the middle of the largest temperate rainforest in the world and one of the Earth's last old-growth forests. Prince of Wales Island is a remote location. It's only accessible seasonally and by bush plane or ferry. So this project proposes to install air source heat pumps in approximately 240 tribal buildings. They would help reduce residents' reliance on and emissions from fossil fuels. The tribally owned project could be powered by existing clean hydroelectric resources, potentially offering affordable rates for the residents. And the selectee, Spruce Root, plans to provide local workforce development and training around the heat pump installation and maintenance. Next slide, please. East Central Community College solar and lighting upgrades. To meet peak energy demands, East Central Community College proposes to install a megawatt of solar generation to serve 38 campus facilities and to upgrade 25 facilities with energy efficient LED lighting. The integrated project is expected to reduce the college's annual energy cost by $170,000. And part of the effort, the college is developing one of the first community college solar installation and maintenance curricula in the state of Mississippi. Next slide, please. This project, titled Green Care, Empowering Resilience in Poteau. Located near Tornado Alley, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma's Poteau campus has averaged 3 outages a year since 2018 due to severe storms. This project proposes to create a microgrid with 2.1 megawatt hours of battery energy storage, and that would provide backup power during the outages for a health clinic, child development center, and food distribution center. So the project aims to upgrade 7 of the buildings on the campus with efficient LED light fixtures and energy management systems that would save an estimated $140,000 in electricity costs each year. Next slide, please. This project, titled Grid Access and Resiliency for Unserved Rural and Indigenous People. The project proposes to extend underground electric distribution lines 30 miles into areas of Northeast Washington that are classified as disadvantaged by the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. So by upgrading the Strasburg substation up to 190, so between 135 and 190 unserved homes would have access to electrical service for the first time. Providing first-time grid access would not only reduce local dependence on harmful diesel generators, but the households would have power for modern necessities like heating and cooling, refrigeration, lighting, and access to the internet. Things that a lot of us take for granted, but ultimately can increase overall economic opportunity in their area. Next slide, please. The High Penetration Solar Battery Project in Ambler, Alaska. So located 45 miles north of the Arctic Circle, 27% of the residents in this traditional Inupiaq village, they live below the poverty line. So the project aims to upgrade an existing power plant to allow for a 400 kilowatt solar PV system and a 500 kilowatt hour battery storage system. The village plans to own and operate renewable generating assets separately, producing nearly a quarter of the community's electricity. So when fully integrated, the clean energy system would increase the resilience of the islanded microgrid and decrease diesel use by more than 20,000 gallons annually. And that, they hope, would allow the village's diesel generators to be turned off for the first time in more than 40 years. Next slide, please. This project, titled Kokkinak's Paradigm Shift, Big Battery as Our System's Energy Backbone. So like many villages that are only accessible by boat and plane, Kokkinak Village of 170 people, mostly Indigenous residents, use diesel to supplement other power sources. So this project would upgrade Kokkinak, Alaska's microgrid with a 943 kilowatt hour storage system and a solar PV, a wind turbine, and electric thermal storage heating units. So with all of these upgrades, the project proposes to significantly increase microgrid's reliability and resilience. They hope displacing 70% or more of village fossil fuel use within the first 2 years, and ultimately allowing for scaling to meet anticipated demand that will be driven by population growth, electric vehicle use, and more prevalent heat pumps. Next slide, please. Lake City Area Power and Resiliency Augmentation Enterprise. So during the past 2 years, this area of rural Colorado experienced 76 outages due to extreme weather and wildfires, including one 28-hour outage during a sub-zero overnight temperatures. So the proposed project plans to replace 30 miles of aged overhead electric distribution lines, enhancing local grid resilience while reducing costs for operations and maintenance. The upgrades would also prevent additional fires, they hope, that would be caused by overloading and facilitate the integration of more renewable energy. Next slide, please. All right, thanks for hanging in there with me. This is the project titled Navajo Sun Power Home Solar Project. Navajo communities have some of the best solar resources in the country, yet a significant portion of Navajo Nation homes don't have reliable access to electricity, and thus they lack essential services like refrigeration, medical device usage, and internet access. So this project plans to install 375 kilowatts of solar PV with battery storage systems on approximately 75 off-grid Navajo Nation homes. They're located far from the grid and other community structures, and that distance has delayed electric service to these households. So the PV and battery systems would allow homeowners to participate in Navajo Nation and Indian health services programs that subsidize other home improvements which require electricity. Next project, please. All right, the new Stoyahawk solar battery. Rural Yupik villages in the remote Dillingham region of southwest Alaska face unique challenges being isolated from major road and power systems. So the Alaska Village Electric Cooperative aims to construct a 500 kilowatt solar PV array, a 540 kilowatt hour battery energy storage system, and a microgrid controller, leveraging their abundant summer daylight hours to produce energy for 2 remote Indigenous communities. The clean energy generated will displace nearly a quarter of fuel consumption at the existing diesel power plant that serves these communities, which in turn, they hope would improve air quality and lower the potential for spillage on the Nushagak River. Next slide, please. Uzinki Independent Power Energy Improvement Project. This project in Uzinki proposes to construct 160 kilowatts of solar PV and 210 kilowatt hours battery storage for a new microgrid in the remote Alaska Native village. This, they hope, would offer reliable, resilient backup power during severe weather outages. The technologies represent a cost-effective and low-maintenance renewable energy option for this community of 128 Indigenous residents who fish, hunt, and pick berries for sustenance. They need electricity for modern refrigeration and for these resources to last during the off-season. The project expects to reduce electricity costs by 10%. Next slide, please. All right. This project, called Permanent High Quality Clean Energy Access for Rural Indigenous Communities. As I previously mentioned, Navajo communities have some of the best solar resources in the country, but yet thousands of their homes lack access to the electric grid. This project would install 568 kilowatts of solar PV and 1,769 kilowatt hours of battery storage in approximately 350 currently off-grid homes across the nation. Approximately 140 of those economically vulnerable homes would receive service at a reduced rate. That should enable residents to access high quality, zero carbon electricity. Next slide, please. The Ravalli Electric Community Storage Project. This project aims to install a battery energy storage system at the Woodside substation. That substation serves 2 communities that are subject to extreme winter weather as well as wildfire risks. So the system would provide clean backup power during outages to the corresponding volunteer fire departments and also a local school that's used as a community shelter. The system could also ultimately distribute energy during peak times. That would help reduce high demand charges on residents' bills and decrease greenhouse gas emissions from local power plants. Next slide, please. All right. Reliability and cost effectiveness in rural areas using environmentally sound practices. This project aims to improve grid reliability in 3 counties by addressing 2 critical issues: inefficient fuses and vegetation management. So the fuses will be replaced with self-restoring reclosers, which will better protect the utility equipment from electric overload and short circuit damage. They could reduce outages by up to 80%. The project would also strategically clear unwanted vegetation along the power line right of way and replant the area with native species, creating sustainable habitats for local wildlife and potentially saving $50,000 in maintenance costs annually. Next project, please. Next slide. All right, this is the REMC transmission line rebuild. So particularly in areas facing economic distress, access to reliable and affordable and resilient energy is critical for community revitalization. So with this grant, the Randolph Electric Membership Corporation would replace 21 miles of deteriorating wooden transmission poles with galvanized steel poles through 4 central North Carolina communities. The existing poles have been damaged by wildfire and other natural hazards, and their upgrades would improve infrastructure durability and longevity. Next slide, please. This is the Rural Rebuild and Reconductor project. So the Monongahela Power Company plans to build more than 23 miles of aged power distribution lines and connect a 2-mile tie line with Petersburg substation. The upgrades would increase grid reliability and resilience for 3,000 customers in 3 counties of rural West Virginia. The project's higher voltage lines would enable Monongahela Power Company to restore service faster after an outage. Next slide, please. Thanks for hanging in with me. This is the best part, is hearing about the projects. Tanacross Solar PV and Tok battery energy storage system. So this project plans to install 1.5 megawatts of solar PV on the grid at the Alaska Power and Telephone Power Plant. That provides electricity to federally recognized tribes in Tanacross, Tetlin, and Dot Lake. Paired with 1.5 megawatt hours of battery storage in Tok, Alaska, the project is expected to displace more than 125,000 gallons of diesel fuel annually, thereby improving air quality and reducing noise pollution in local communities. The proposed project would generate more than $380,000 in revenue for Tanana Chiefs Conference, which they hope would be used to cover operations and maintenance costs and establish a reserve fund for replicating similar projects across the interior of Alaska. Thank you for hanging in there with me, and thanks to all of our applicants and selectees for these awesome projects. I'm going to pass it back over to Todd Schrader.
Thank you, Regina, and well done getting through all of those. So next and final part of our presentation today is just talk a little bit more about getting involved in the projects and where we can get community input and how communities can be involved. So next slide, please. So if you've watched some of our other presentations in this area, our national briefings and our various projects, you've seen this slide, a slightly different format. We talked about many phases. In these projects, because they're a little bit more straightforward, smaller in size, smaller in cost, we're going to have probably streamlined processes to get the projects built. That by no means will we eliminate community input, but we probably won't use the sort of four-phased approach that you've perhaps seen before. However, each step of a project always has planning, development, construction, operations, whatever you're doing. And in those steps, we will look to have community input and discussions of community benefits and or community benefits associated with those steps in the project going forward. Right now, we're just at the beginning of the process, so the negotiations are just starting. We hope to move them along quickly, but they take a little bit of time to get through as we keep going. Again, the project's had initial community benefits proposals, and we'll be looking at those and as we move forward. Here we've listed, again, a few of the ways and a few of the places we believe there will be chances to have impact and to reach the project teams or OSED directly going forward. Probably the best one, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, is the virtual briefings that we have coming up. Again, we consider what we hear in the negotiation process. During the regional briefings themselves, there will be an opportunity for attendees to ask questions directly of the projects and, and raise their concerns. Next slide, please. So I mentioned these briefings a couple times, and these will be on the website as we post these slides for more information. But these will be virtual briefings, 3 of them, regional. So, Regina went through quite a few different projects all across the nation. And so to aid in sort of getting local community input, we've broken it up into the eastern region of the continental U.S., the western region, and Alaska. And you see the times there and the dates, and the information to register is in the link there. Next slide, please. Another key piece of any project the government does and any action the government does is NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act. And this requires us to evaluate the impacts of all our projects and to obtain public input into those projects themselves. There are 3 potential types of NEPA that can apply to this. And we're right now just looking at which of these would be applicable, which are the correct ones: categorical exclusion, environmental assessment, or environmental impact statement. We're just at the beginning of the process, so more to come on that, but you can see where some of the public input is associated with each of those projects. And again, these slides will be available to study a little bit more in the future. And I believe a link has just been dropped in the chat for this also. Next slide, please. So questions, I want to be sure you can reach us and raise any concerns you have. And you can see the email on the screen there. That is looked at every day. We have people reviewing it, and we're ensuring that your voice is heard in this process. And we look forward to getting your perspectives going forward. Also, a great way to keep up with things is to sign up and receive the OSED news and updates. And you can see the information there. It's probably the best way to know what's going on across all of OSED in all of our projects. And again, this information will be posted in various formats. Finally, last slide, please. So appreciate everyone taking the time for us to talk today about these exciting projects going forward. And we hope you learned a little bit more about the projects, about OSED, and we look forward to particularly the regional briefings that are coming up. And again, any questions, our email is there. Please reach out. But I'll say thank you and have a good rest of your day.